Hi, everybody, and welcome to Keep Fishkill Beautiful Community Monday meeting at 7 o'clock on October 30th. I am going to open it, and I'm going to start with my presentation, and then we will have Q&A with the three candidates who we have endorsed. I don't know if that's me, but I'm going to make sure that everybody's on mute for the time being, just to make sure. Okay, good. And let me get my screen open. Hold on. All right. Keep Fishkill Beautiful Monday meeting on October 30th. And let me also make sure that I can see if somebody enters the room. Okay. I did ask that everyone view our earlier recordings because they build on one another, especially in regard to the apartments on Main Street. We have been doing a lot of FOIA requests, and they've been kind of trickling in, and so rather than going through everything every time, I appreciate everybody who has taken the time to view the last recording of this meeting. So I want to open with a little bit about Keep Fishkill Beautiful from those of you who don't know or aren't familiar with the group. Who are we? We are volunteers. We live in both the town and the village. The main thing that Keep Fishkill Beautiful has focused on since we came into being has been responsible growth and the issue of traffic. We are nonpartisan. Really, really important. I personally am very bothered by the labels because I don't believe that, especially on the town level, that whether you're a Democrat or Republican, it matters as much. I think that, we should be definitely looking at our officials and picking the ones who are best suited to support what we need here in Fishkill. So we do absolutely have conservatives in our group, and people who kind of are all over the spectrum. So just I want to just put that out there. I put it at the beginning of every call. Conservatives are concerned about traffic too. You don't need to be a tree hugger to know that we have too much traffic in this community. So thank you to everybody who's joined the call. We are again focused on traffic and development. We are a trusted voice, which is why we're recording and sharing these. As I explained at the beginning, we record these meetings, we record the questions so that there's no real mystery about what we're talking about. We started in 2009, where a high-density housing apartment complex was proposed for Baxtertown Road, which is just off of Osborne Hill, really, really, really busy area. And we were told that was our first battle, and we were told we weren't going to win it, and we did. We won that battle. We raised awareness. The same thing. We did nothing for 11 years after that, because it's not that nothing important wasn't happening, but it wasn't anything that was so unbelievably horrible that we felt the need to get involved. So the next time we got involved was 11 years later, when the Church of the Nazarene, which is across from CVS right on Main Street, also wanted to put in a high-density housing unit. So we returned, we came together again. We're, like I said, a small group of volunteers, but we're connected to a lot of people in the community. And then we got involved in fighting that project. And I will say that, again, we were told we couldn't win because of the church had a lot of powerful, attorneys, and they had connections and all of this stuff. We were told not to bother, but we did, and we ended up winning that fight as well. And it took several years. Okay, so that was an ongoing fight where we were several times had to mobilize the community and protest and write letters and petitions. It was a lot of work. Now we're here, 2023, with Jackson Crossing. They're calling it Jackson Crossing. I call it the apartments on Main Street because that's what it is. And we firmly believe that we can win this as well, because we have seen time and time again what happens when the community gets involved and they're vocal and they express themselves to the powers that be. And, you know, if you're loud enough, you can be heard. So we're throwing this out there. We are raising money. We had a GoFundMe that we set up. And we need to create banners. Okay, you will, and this is a picture actually of, we have been trying to get the village to post an announcement about the upcoming public hearing in November. And I saw a picture on social media that showed this announcement posted, and I went to look for it and I literally couldn't find it. And I had to drive past it 2 or 3 times. And then finally, it's this little white sign here that you can't even read, that we took as we were driving past. Okay. So we are going to personally create banners that are a decent size that people will be able to see to announce the upcoming public hearings. We're going to do this ourselves. So we are also creating postcards, t-shirts, mailings. We need to have this stuff now. Okay. We have a goal of $500. And this QR code is where you can donate to help us reach this goal. We've already reached about 250 of it. We're halfway there. But if everyone here can contribute a little bit, we will have a lot more of the tools to be able to do this. So this little QR code is just going to sit in the corner for the rest of the meeting. And if you feel like making a donation, please just scan it. Whatever you can give would be very, very much appreciated. So updates since our last meeting in October. Here's a follow-up on some of the FOIA requests that we made. On September, so this is reviewing the timeline that we went over in our last meeting, September 7th, 2021, we were FOIAing to find out what local bill C-2021 was. And we have not heard back yet. And Anne, and I don't know if Danielle is here, but anyone who has been helping to FOIA these, if you want to jump in, I'll try to keep an eye on the chat. Just raise your hand, or you can just hop in and say hi. So if this has come in since we spoke and you gave me the update, let me know. But that FOIA request has not come in. Then we have sent in a FOIA request, and this one's real important. Excuse me. We believe that by law, the village of Fishkill was required to notify surrounding municipalities of zoning code changes, like the apartments that we're looking at. And we believe the form used would have been Form 239. So we are also FOIAing that, and we are trying to find out more about that.
Karen?
Yeah, go ahead.
They cannot locate it. They don't have that form.
Right. Well, I'm getting there, Anne.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said we're waiting for that. I'm sorry.
Oh, we requested it. No, it's okay.
I'm sorry. Sorry. Oh, I spoiled it for you. Spoiler alert. Sorry.
That's all right. So and Anne is right. Like, you know, and this isn't the only thing that they were not able to locate when we put in the FOIA request. We believe it was never sent. So we need to find out if this is actually law. And so if anyone on this call, we will put a shout out for volunteers at the end of the call, but would like to spend a few minutes helping us find that out. You know, that would be great. We do need people to help carry some of the burden of going after these things. So we also did a FOIA request for the minutes from the Village of Fishkill Comprehensive Planning Committee meetings in 2021. If you remember, they formed a comprehensive planning committee early in the year in 2021. I think it was January, and the current mayor, Kathy Martin, was on the committee. She wasn't the mayor at the time. It was called by Michio. And we have found nothing, but we do know that the result of this new comprehensive planning committee was that west of Jackson, where we're having all these problems now, had never before had the ability to go to a 40-foot high structure, and so there were these changes made by the comprehensive planning committee to make this possible. And we were trying to see any notes of any of these meetings, and we could not find them either. Not located. They may not have taken them, right? Like, we're not 100%. But that would have been very helpful to be able to see. Again, we go through that transparency, and it's frustrating that there's so few. And apologies, the changes were made by the planning board. I want to make sure that I'm clear about that. October 26th, during the last Village of Fishkill Planning Board meeting, Keep Fishkill volunteers heard that the fire department had given input regarding the apartments at Jackson, Maine, and they have submitted a letter, and we have FOIA'd that, and we still haven't gotten that one back either. Okay, so we haven't received that yet. We might have an update for next week on some of these FOIA requests. So one of our FOIA requests, we were looking for documentation referencing a public hearing regarding BC 2021, and this is what we got. This is literally it. Okay, it was not on letterhead. You know, it's just typed out. It's got nobody's name on it. And do we know anything else about this? Like, it was such a strange thing to get, and this was it, right?
We then sent in another FOIA request asking for a proof, like a receipt, basically, that was submitted to the Poughkeepsie Journal, which is the village's paper, like municipal paper. So, and we have not heard back yet.
And all of this is important because, you know, to go back because the village, the elected officials have a legal obligation to be transparent about these things and to notify their neighbors and possibly to even notify, nearby municipalities. And we're really trying to see if they were, if they did their due diligence with all these things. So this is not satisfactory, so we're going to continue to wait for other things because this doesn't really tell us anything. And having since sent in a new FOIA request requesting proof of publication for the public hearing. Still haven't gotten that, right, Anne?
Correct.
Okay. So that would be like a receipt to the paper or, the request, anything, right? So we are waiting on that to come in as well. So there was a Village of Fishkill Planning Board meeting on the 19th, and the developer had said verbally during that meeting that the property now has a setback all the way around of 20 feet, which is the required by law. However, when we looked at the written submission, we saw that only one side is 20 feet. It is not all the way around. So there is a discrepancy between what was said at the meeting and what we saw in writing. And why is this significant? And that is because if they adhere to the zoning law, which is, without having to request a variance or anything like that, and they put the 20-foot setback all around the property, which is what they're supposed to do, they would lose 8 parking spots, and that would reduce the number of apartments that they can put in. So this is really important, but this shows how deep we need to dive into not only what's being said, but what is actually written and in fact. So we as volunteers, unpaid people who have jobs in their own time are doing this, have to go in and pick through all of this stuff and come and find these discrepancies. Is Danielle on the call? Because she was going to talk about the setback issue. I didn't see her join. If she's not, I can.
If she isn't, I can.
I kind of wanted her to be here to talk about.
Yeah. I'm not sure if she ended up working late tonight, or I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you want to talk about it then?
Yeah. I mean, you essentially covered it. So again, just to reiterate what was said during the meeting, and I do have it on recording, that the representative for the developer stated that they increased, which they didn't really increase. They just are now adhering to the law. Right. But they said 20 feet all the way around. So that is essentially, if you can picture it, it's the side that faces Jackson and the side that faces Maine. And, again, just to reiterate, if they are adhering to that full 20 feet, then that knocks out a large part of the parking spots. It also sets the driveway, and so it could be like a snowball effect. Another thing that I wanted to mention, and I know this was a real sticking point for Danielle, who lives in that one home on the corner, the 20-foot setback that they are adhering to the law, but that they have now put in, they're planning to use it as a dog recreation area, i.e., like you can take your dog to go to the bathroom. And also for excess snow, they'll pile it. So essentially, this residence is going to have the parking lot snow directly behind her house. And, we can imagine what that's going to do to the water table and
Right.
likelihoods of flood. So those are really the points that
Okay.
I wanted to bring up. You've really discussed it. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, so thanks, Anne. I'm going to ask everyone to hold your questions until we're done. We're going to now we're going to transition into the part about the endorsements that we have put out. And first I want to talk about why Keep Fishkill Beautiful is all of a sudden endorsing candidates, because I have had people say, oh, what does this have to do with the Jackson Crossing? And it's the village, it's the town. Listen, it's Groundhog's Day, okay? Because we cannot, I'm telling you, we physically can't go through another 10 years of every couple of years having to do all of this and to mobilize the community and get, all of these different people to be watchdogs. We need people in elected office who will not force us to do that. All right. Because, in all honesty, if I have to do this anymore, I'm just going to run for office myself, because I'm not getting paid to do this and it's becoming a full-time job. So we are endorsing the candidates who we feel strongly, very confidently stand by the mission of Keep Fishkill Beautiful, which is to really listen to the residents who overwhelmingly have issues, more so than anything else in the community, with the traffic and development. So we need people in office so that we can go back to our lives and not have to worry about this anymore. So I'm going to talk about and introduce those people who we are endorsing. First is Ozzy Albra. And Ozzy has been involved in Keep Fishkill Beautiful as a volunteer since the beginning, since 2009. He also, after he was elected town supervisor, he worked with us to fight the Church of the Nazarene development. And he signed a letter in support of residents fighting the apartments at Jackson Crossing. Mr. Albra also agreed to participate in a public forum. And we found that to be very enlightening. When we had the other three candidates who we invited to be in this public forum, three of them were absolutely locked down and refused not to do it. And I just felt like that was such a red flag when we're trying to get people to come out and honestly look us in the eye and promise that you will be listening and representing, rather than developers, the residents. So that is Mr. Albra, and he's going to talk in just a moment. Greg Totino, he has worked to bring matters related to traffic in Fishkill to the attention of the DOT. He physically got up and spoke out at the village public hearing about the Jackson Crossing apartments, and has been very vocal and supportive of residents in that fight. And he also agreed to debate. And Don, I volunteered on the comprehensive planning committee. Don was involved in that. He sent us a very compelling memo about why he is, how much respect that he has for open space and our aquifer. He too spoke at the Village of Fishkill public hearing. We really want people in office who are not only going to just, give us a nod and a wink and a handshake, but do the dirty work and get involved and go toe to toe to represent their constituents. So those are who we have joining the call. So I'm going to stop my screen share, and I am going to now introduce Ozzy first. Ozzy, if you want to talk a little bit about yourself, and then I thought we could open it up and just let people ask questions. So if you have any questions for Mr. Albra after he introduces himself, Please, if you don't know how to use the raise hand button, just let me know, but you should raise your hand under the reactions thing at the bottom, and that way you could just ask him whatever. It doesn't have to be about traffic. It could be whatever.
You want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, yes.
Okay, well, I'm Ozzy Alba, the current supervisor of the town of Fishkill, and I ran 4 years ago on a platform of stopping high-density housing and traffic and protecting our aquifer. And we've done that in the last 4 years with help with my secretary, Greg Totino, and Don Pizzula on the comprehensive plan. We were able to effectively shut down 1,400 high-density housing units from coming into the town of Fishkill. That would have created need for a new school, which would have cost about $35 million that we would have to pay for. We didn't make traffic worse. We kind of stabilized it. We worked with the county to build a new Washington Avenue bridge. And I'm currently working with the state and county to do a new overpass on the 9D corridor by the Beacon Newburgh Bridge. And the big thing that we've really locked down on is protection of our aquifer with aquifer protection laws. And then we got in, my assistant Greg was able to help get a grant with the state to do an in-kind service with New York State. What's called DWSP2. It's a water program where in the future, they have identified all our water problems and solutions to these things. It's going to make it much more difficult for future supervisors and town boards to change the laws to help developers make more money when it comes to using water. And then we shifted those resources from developers being able to use our town resources into improving our parks, recreation, and historical preservation. I just want to touch one thing before I take any questions. I was elected, quite frankly, basically on a bipartisan ticket, because if it wasn't for conservatives and Republicans cross-endorsing me and voting for me, I would never be supervisor. So you've got a ton of Fishkill residents who are Republicans and conservatives who are tired of the sprawl. And that was a real good comment that you mentioned in the beginning of the meeting, because it's absolutely true.
Right. Right.
So, yeah. So I'm open to any questions right now. Come on, guys. I'm here.
Yes, he has said they are all going to be very forthright and honest. Actually, Ozzy, I can start because someone asked a question in the Keep Fishkill Beautiful chat. I don't know
Sure.
if that person is on here, but their question had to do with the defunding the police signs.
Sure.
Would you address that and like explain, where that's coming from and what that's all about?
It's first of all, it's just some people playing politics with defunding the police and trying to attach a particular party for defunding the police. I can tell you right now, I'm a retired police officer. I take public safety very seriously. The town of Fishkill in the last 4 years has increased police spending by 25%. There are some people that want us to spend more money on the police, and there's a lot of people that want to spend less money on the police. I think 25% increase in 4 years is reasonable. I think that I'm the type of person, when people pay their tax bill, their water bills, contest their assessments, I don't sit in the back office. I'm out there talking to them. And I can't tell you that many times where seniors can't afford to pay their water bills. So when people want me to spend more money on a certain department, it causes me to raise taxes on the citizens. And what's happening in the town of Fishkill, not only with this development, you're seeing the gentrification of the town of Fishkill, where our seniors, and I got 4 children here, they're not going to be able to afford to live in the town of Fishkill.
Yeah.
Well, that's the long-term things that I look at. How do we keep our seniors here? How do I keep my kids here, your kids here, and keep Fishkill beautiful? So the defunding the police is total nonsense. There has been no defunding, and there'll never be any defunding in the town of Fishkill. Any other
Ozzy,
questions?
you are a former officer.
Yes, I'm a retired town of Bedford police officer. I'm a recipient of the Meritorious Service Award, a Distinguished Service Cross.
Oh,
Not many officers have either one of them.
I want to say that some donations have started to come through. So if you did make a donation, I feel like I'm on a telethon, but if you made a donation, like, thank you. Very helpful. All right. If anyone thinks of a question, we don't have to ask it right now, but this is like, they're a captive audience, these guys here today. So, let's take advantage of it.
It's Loretta Adams.
Yeah.
For me, how I understood it watching the meeting with the chief, there's a distinct difference between defunding the police and the councilmen reviewing the request by a particular department. My understanding in listening to the town board meeting was that you and your councilman reviewed the request for a certain allocation from the police department, and upon review, you reduced their request based upon whether you felt it wasn't justified or whatever. And you didn't defund the police, you adjusted his request, his budget request. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So what happens with the budget, the town supervisor in towns in New York State, the supervisor, well, actually, it's the controller that does most of the work. She begins the ground game. She spends a solid month or two preparing for the budget to get to me. And then we review everything with the department heads, and the department heads make a list, a wish list. And for example, the chief asked for, I believe, 3 patrol cars, a traffic control machine, a license plate reader, and upgrades to the computer. Those were the requests that he made. And we gave him an extra patrol car, and I believe the traffic machine, because the traffic machine is something that the citizens of Fishkill like a lot. And we kept those 2 out of 5 requests that he had. Other departments requested, the controller's department, I'm sorry, the assessor asked for another additional staff. He was denied that. The building department was denied staff. He was denied staff. The rec department director wanted more staff. I denied him staff. So this is just a wish list, and his budget in the last 4 years has increased by 25%.
Thank you. So, and
Yes.
generally, what you reduced in his budget was all MPS items, not personal service items, for the
Yeah,
most part.
what we have is one of the good things my predecessor left me was it was called a capital plan, and we have a 5-year capital plan in our budget. Not many towns have that. It's a really good thing. So every year we update the capital plan, and it's police cars, it's highway trucks, it's computers, it's a big thing that's on our thing is heating for the entire town hall, chillers for the police station and the town hall. So these are items that get on the 5-year capital plan, like carpeting, et cetera, et cetera. And as we go down the road, we take care of these things a little bit at a time. So it's just a normal process of the budgeting process. And the town of Fishkill is lucky to have this 5-year capital plan, thanks to my predecessor.
Thank you, Ozzy.
And
Yes.
anyone who just joined the call, we have Ozzy and Don and Greg here, who are all of the candidates who Keep Fishkill Beautiful has endorsed because of their commitment to representing neighbors over developers. So if anybody, and you can ask them about anything that you have questions about. So if anyone who just joined the call has questions, Ozzy is available. And I think next I'll go just in the order of people on my screen. Don, if you want to say hi, introduce yourself.
Yeah, very interesting listening. First of all, thanks, Karen and Ann, for having us here today. I think this kind of discussion is really, really important. Interesting. The 3 of us have been out canvassing. We're knocking on doors all over the town. I hit a couple of apartment complexes, and all I could think of was at Jackson Avenue 20 years from now. I mean, these apartment complexes were very large in this town. They were built in that boom time, in the 2003 to 2008, I'd say. And they're run down. They've changed hands a number of times. They're not being maintained. The residents are complaining like crazy. They get rent increase after rent increase, and yet the grounds are not maintained, the buildings are not maintained. And I just want, Jackson Avenue's concept is somebody's going to get rich fast and walk away from it. And I would hate to see that on downtown Fishkill, what some of these other apartment complexes look like shortly after they've been out. So, yeah, I think your work on this on your team is very, very important. And believe me, I think the 3 of us would be supporting you 150%.
Thank you. That is awesome to hear. And just going back, Don, to what you're saying, it isn't going to go away. We need to be able to do this so that we don't face these problems over and over again. And the complex itself was originally supposed to be mixed use, right? Like they came in saying like, oh, we're going to have businesses on the ground floor and some apartments up on the and now and it's exactly like what you say. I don't think the businesses bring in the money that the renters do. And you can be lazy, right? In a business, it could go out, and in renters, it's just this kind of churning out of rent. It's I can see why it would be tempting, but it is not good for the community. Does anyone have a question for Dawn?
So
Don,
Don,
what was, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Loretta.
Don, do you live in the village or the town?
I live in
Not
the
the-
town.
You live in the
Yep.
town. I do think what you were saying and Karen, with the business, having strictly residential, renters will move, but it is difficult to pick up your business and move if something isn't being maintained.
Right.
But so you can be more transient, or you're intended to only stay for a short time. But when you establish a business and build your business, you do and hope to stay there. So
It just
it is
the
important.
renters that I've spoken to don't feel that they can just pick up and leave. The prices throughout Fishkill, the rent is incredible. And that's their home. That's where they want to stay. As much as a homeowner would want to stay where they are. They don't feel that I can just pick up and go. They really don't. They feel really stuck.
Yeah.
Between a rock and a hard place.
I think
Ozzy, did you
Ozzy's
have-
raising his hand.
Yes, I just want to follow up on this renting situation. We lowered the tax rate for non-home for homestead, which is what we own, 14%, and we've lowered, due to the equalization rate, the non-homestead, which includes these apartments, by 16%. So these apartment complexes are getting a nice tax cut. Their taxes are certainly not going up, I can tell you that, but they keep raising the rent.
Right.
And that's why they want to build more apartments, because that's where the money's in. And I don't blame people for wanting to make money, but I lived in an apartment complex on 9D for 10 years. And every year the rent went up in Fishkill, and they would tell me the taxes went up, the taxes went up. And when I finally got a hold of all the paperwork, because I was just curious for myself, for that 10-year period, taxes went up maybe 1%, but my rent went up 25, 30%. You follow me?
Mhm.
So this is something where our state elected officials need to get involved with these apartments by limiting how much they can raise the rent based on their assessed value. Because if we're all taxpayers here, if an apartment complex is giving us $200,000 a year in rent revenue for taxes, and they're making $1 million this year, but they're making $2 million next year, that should be equalized out more into the benefits of the residents of the entire town of Fishkill. So we need to get our state senators and state assemblymen involved in that process. This way you would knock it down, because if they keep making this type of profit, they should be paying more in taxes. That's just my personal view.
Yeah.
Just
Now,
wanted to add.
Greg, did someone else have a question?
I had a comment about the corner complex. One of the things that we specifically found was that the county was saying, don't put residents on the ground floor because it has a tendency to deaden business. So, I kind of see you have the village, and the village is kind of centralized east of Jackson, but you have other businesses that kind of seem to be, out on their own west of Jackson. So I don't understand from the village's perspective, why they would not want to have a diverse group of businesses, different businesses that, maybe have different, I don't know, different industry right there, rather than just add more apartments. And but Don, to you again, and we worked together on the comprehensive plan update committee, and I appreciated your input there. What do you see as maybe one of the most challenging things to see our goals through, as far as to secure, continue securing green spaces and, help with traffic? Because if we don't shift the traffic and how we're dealing with traffic, people already are very miserable trying to traverse through Fishkill. And I know on 9D, there's some efforts made with kind of revamping how the traffic flows. What do you see as maybe one of the things that might be very challenging to try and continue that effort? And how can you address that challenge?
No, and I remember that we discussed some other possible road construction that would kind of detour traffic around the people trying to get to, say, Merritt Boulevard. Would, if they could have another route to get there other than going through the village and the back streets of the village to get there. I mean, I don't, I'm not an expert. I don't know about how those things can take place, but it sounded like a very logical possibility from the gentleman that introduced that. Um, Boy, when 84 blocks up, the village gridlocks. It literally gridlocks. You can't make a left or a right or drive through or anything. I don't know. I don't know. Those are some of the things that we need to really, really examine. It's certainly loud and clear. That's the residents' concern with the comprehensive plan. That came through as clear as can be. Traffic, traffic, traffic. And so we as a municipality, I think, need to address the residents' concern and see what creative solutions there are out there to alleviate it.
And Greg, thank you for being so patient. I would be happy if you could introduce yourself now.
Evening. Yeah, I'm Greg Tatina. Many people here know me. I see a lot of familiar faces and names that I recognize. But for those who are not familiar with me, I'm 31 years old. I've lived in the town of Fishkill my entire life. For most of the past 4 years, I've been the assistant, the secretary to Supervisor Albra. I say until recently, because I do now have a new and rather exciting job down in Yonkers that I'm very happy to have been able to take. But you know, my heart and my priorities remain in the town of Fishkill. It's where I grew up, and the town looks very different to when it did when I was a child. You know, I remember a time when, you know, Route 9 was not something that you would take your life in your hands if you were crossing Route 9. I remember a time when you could get from one side of Fishkill to the other in less than 10 minutes, and it didn't have to be at 2 o'clock in the morning. I see the direction that town has been headed in, and one of the reasons why I was, you know, inspired to join Supervisor Albert in his work when he was running for supervisor in 2019 was because I see the good in the idea of putting residents first. And for me, it's a no-brainer. Unfortunately, in politics, so often money talks, and when it's in the interest of a politician to serve the needs of the developer over his constituents, unfortunately, too often that's what he's going to do. But I'm not in this for the politics. I'm not in this for the acclaim. I'm in this just to try and deliver a town that hopefully someday, if I'm blessed to have children, they can live in and afford to live in and want to live in. So when it comes to the work that I've been doing for Supervisor Albra, it comes down to really helping his platform, his agenda become a reality. So I have been representing the town with the Dutchess County Transportation Council since 2021. So I've been bringing issues related to traffic, particularly those issues that are affecting us in Fishkill, to the attention of the people at the county level and at the state level with the DOT. You know, an example of progress I've actually been able to make is earlier this year, we had new lights installed at the intersection of Route 52 and Route 84 over near Town Hall. And you know, the lights look great, but they weren't functioning properly. They weren't staying green long enough for traffic flowing east into the village to actually be able to get through, and it was causing awful delays as if we needed more of those. That Supervisor Albert's request, they had attempted to fix it, but the fix was temporary in nature. And I was able to get the ear of Lance McMillan, who's the DOT regional director, and sure enough, the next day they had crews down there fixing it. It hasn't been a problem since. So there are ways that we can, you know, fight these battles, even if they're small ones, larger scale, and make sure that at the end of the day, the voices of the residents, the concerns of the residents are the ones that are being taken seriously. Because at the end of the day, developers, development projects, they don't vote, residents do. Residents have to live in the town of Fishkill, developers don't. Development projects, they don't live in the town of Fishkill. They're buildings that get slapped up and then the person who builds them walks away. And we've seen far too often in the last 15 to 20 years, a developer who comes into town with a great idea, puts it up. Perhaps there's issues with the quality of the construction. Perhaps they were a little shortchanging when it came to certain aspects of the infrastructure, whether that's their water or their sewer lines, and then they walk away. And who ends up having to foot the bill? It's the residents. And at the end of the day, if you're not putting your residents first and you're in government, then you're in the wrong line of business. And I decided to get in the race this year because I saw people who were running on the other side who I felt were not putting the residents first and who are in the wrong line of business. And I would just point to the fact that last week, Don and Ozzy and I hoped to engage in a spirited discussion on the issues, and they didn't have an interest. They did not want to speak with the residents. They did not want to speak with their opponents. And that to me speaks volumes about the motivations of the people involved. Because if at the end of the day, you don't want to talk about the issues and you don't want to answer questions from the people who you're elected to serve, then it begs the question, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And that was a pattern.
Sadly, yes.
Mike put something in the chat to everyone. He is asking about the Form 239. Since town residents will be, and this is another thing when it comes to like the Democrat, Republican, the village and the town, you know, like I really feel as though, you know, it's important to understand that we all are part of the same community and the same family, and we send our kids to the same schools and we drive on the same roads, and we, you know, we're intertwined. So absolutely both there is and should be an overlap, and the town of Fishkill should welcome comments from the village, and the village should welcome comments from the town. And that is also something that I have really appreciated that I've seen in Don and Greg and Ozzy as well, that willingness to just, you know, come on here unscripted and open it up and let anybody ask what they want to ask. So Mike is asking, can the town look into this issue and if proper legal procedures were followed by the village? So is that something that any of you guys can help with?
Yes,
I was
we
actually
can
going
look
to answer
in,
that myself.
yeah, we can look into the 239. I believe it, we talked, I was in conversation with someone about, it's actually a 239M form as in Mary. Anybody sound that, does that sound familiar to
It was
anyone?
me. There's actually 3 different 239 forms. There's the NN, the M, and the N form. But all of them are reference intermunicipal notification on changes to zoning.
And is there a setback of 250 feet or 500 feet? The village on their website says 250 feet.
Right.
What is the, does everybody know the actual number? Is it 250 or 500?
Well, the state is 500, and which brings up another kind of confusing thing for me, because if the state is 500, New York State, as you know, is a home rule state. So they often will kick things back to the local municipalities. But it is my understanding that a village could expound on that, but not lessen it. So in other words, they could say, okay, you have to notify people 750 feet surrounding a development, but not lessen it so that they don't have to notify as many people. Is
So the
my
state,
and I might have that incorrect, but that's my understanding of it.
so the state
But
law
what
you think the state law is 500 and the village law is definitely 250. That's what I've seen in there.
correct?
And you said that they didn't have this 239 form, that it didn't exist. What's
The
the technical word?
the response that we got on top of the written submitted FOIA form was cannot locate.
Cannot locate. That was the word. All right. Well, I will follow up to see if it was required within 250 feet or 500 feet. I can do that.
Thank you, Ozzy.
Yep. Cannot locate. Is there anything else that they're missing? Anybody think they're missing anything else?
Well, we are definitely looking into that legal notice proof that it actually was submitted to the paper.
Okay.
We are also looking into their requirements to notify surrounding neighbors. And where that does impact the town is if it's 500 and not 250, there's a large number of town residents that would have received a notice if that was
Mhm.
required by law.
Okay.
But, back to the whole issue of, and I've been very disheartened to hear a lot of people say that the town shouldn't meddle in village business. You are representing people in the village. They pay taxes to you. If someone comes to you for help, and I really deeply appreciate that all three of you, Ozzy, Don, and Greg, were all at that meeting and made your wishes known and made your efforts to support the residents known publicly, that you were standing with us, and that really meant an awful lot to me, and I know it meant a lot to other people as well.
And I want to, throw in there too, the fact that it is really significant that we have chosen to endorse these three after, I don't know, 15 years of being in the trenches and trying to fight and winning, but all of the energy and work that it takes. At the end of the day, if you have elected officials who will respect that, and we're starting with the town because they happen to have the election coming up, and people who are pro-developer are probably kind of disappointed that the timing is as it is, because it really is underscoring which candidates are willing to work with the residents and which are going to blow smoke. And so these three are the ones who are willing to work with the residents, and we will absolutely be doing this again when it comes time to have the village elections, because that's been a thorn in our side too. We just need people in those positions who will respect the will of the residents without us having to exhaust ourselves trying to be heard. There is no reason that we should have to be watchdogs if we elected officials to represent us. That is their job, and they're not doing it.
And I could tell you firsthand, developers that they come to me in Fishkill, they appreciate it when there's my kids in the background. I apologize. I got 4 kids. My youngest 12 fighting with my 16-year-old right now, so I apologize. But the developers, they respect when they come see me and ask for some type of change, that I'm upfront with them and I don't drag them along and get them in the planning board where they spend 20, 30, 50, $100,000 and waste their time. We sit down. Thank you, supervisor. We'll try something else. We had one project with the old M&T Bank on the Route 52 East Fishkill border. A guy came in, wanted to put a self-storage facility in there. I told him, no, I'm not going to be interested in changing the zoning law. Come back with something else. He came back with a teeth. They make teeth there now. The parking lot is full. You got over 100 jobs, good paying jobs there, and it's adding to the economy of the town of Fishkill. So the developers get it. They want you. Who knew that you could do this? One of the two. It's prevalent where they respect you. You're not wasting their time, and they come back with something good, and it's really working. But there are developers out there hoping there's a change of regime, and I'm telling you, 1,400 homes that I've stopped, you're going to see at least half of them come up real quick. And it's very important that the residents of Fishkill, the village, Republicans, Democrats, conservative, independents understand that. Because if you want to keep Fishkill and keep it beautiful, myself, Don, and Greg are the people to make that happen.
There is actually a project that's kind of on the table, and you have to be so careful and watching. And this is within the town. This is on 9D. As someone newly looking at it, it really looks as though they're kind of setting the stage for potentially, zoning code changes. And I thought, that doesn't really, I know that the three of you have spoken out publicly and said, you're not interested in doing zoning code changes. And I appreciate that also.
Yeah, and if I can just jump in for a second, there's just 2 points that I wanted to sort of touch on. The first, both you and Karen have mentioned, which is the idea that the town shouldn't somehow be involved in the village in any way. I'm someone who loves to agree to disagree. I feel like we tend to, in politics and in government, make way too much of the areas where we disagree and use it as an excuse not to work together. Most of the time, I can say someone disagrees with me. I respect your point of view, even if I disagree with it. Most of the time, I'll even remain silent on issues where there's disagreement because I respect that right to hold your own opinion. But on that notion, I was prepared to take exception, and I did speak at the most recent town board meeting about that, which is the notion that the town has no standing before the village is preposterous, because the constituents of the village are constituents of the town. And likewise, the village has every right to come before a town board meeting. We at the town board for years now, under Supervisor Albert, have allowed individuals to come and speak. They don't have to be residents of the town. They can be village residents. They could live in Beacon. We have people who have come from areas outside of the town who want to speak, and the supervisor and the town board allow them to do so. The idea that your opinion is only valid if you get to vote for this person is frankly rather ridiculous. And to hear elected officials saying that, well, we don't need their participation is insulting, not only to the residents of the village, but to the people elected to serve them in different capacities. And I really hope that those officials will consider the implication of the meaning of their words and hopefully make some sort of public statement to change their position on that. The second thing I'd like to address really quickly, because unfortunately I have to jump off. I have a train to catch in 7 minutes. And I'll be brief on this, is that Supervisor Albra mentioned that he stopped more than 1,400 high-density units from coming to the town of Fishkill. What isn't always immediately apparent is how quickly those 1,400 units can rear their head again. Because one of the landmark accomplishments that our administration has been able to achieve is the Rolling Hills case, where the developer sued the town because the town discontinued its consideration of the developer's proposal, which would require a zoning change. And the case set case law for New York State is stating unequivocally that a municipality has the absolute right to enforce its zoning code, which is a fantastic victory for Supervisor Albra. But one of the things which I think has gotten shuffled under the rug is that in the press immediately after that decision, the developer said outright, it's okay, we'll just wait for the next guy. Well, there's somebody here who wants to be the next guy. And he's sort of already made his opinions on the matter clear, because at a town board meeting in September, the day before the public hearing in the village on the Jackson and Maine development proposal, he and his two members of the majority on the town board said, we've got a letter and we're going to give it to the village planning board as part of this public hearing. And he attended that public hearing, and he did not say one word, and he did not hand them that letter until days later, as far as I am aware.
Yeah.
Actions always speak louder than words. And it's clear that any statement that he's against this development, any statement that he's supporting the residents is clearly, he's just pandering to tell people what they want to hear. His actions have exposed his position. So when you hear statements from a developer that, oh, we'll just wait for the next guy, somebody who's going to be more favorable to our project, well, this other guy is the guy they're talking about.
Mhm.
He's the guy that they want to see in there so that they can come and slap up 500 residential units on the 9D corridor, where they can put in, what, 150,000 square feet of commercial property, where they can install a 2-lane traffic circle on 9D and almost certainly require the construction of a new public school. That's going to cost what, $35–40 million at a minimum. And that all comes out of the taxpayers' pockets. And that's not the expense that they're telling you about.
Right.
So it's just a thought to consider that, winning these battles, it's phenomenal what the supervisor has been able to achieve, but people need to be aware of how fragile those victories are, unless the people in charge in the future will stand by the decisions that the supervisor has made now to prevent those types of developments, which are against the interests of the residents of Fishkill, from coming to our town in the first place. I'm afraid I do need to bounce out now, but if anybody's got a quick question, I'll be happy to answer it as I leave my building here.
Well, Greg, you can always come back with this in answer to this question, because I do have a question. How can the newly elected officials continue to safeguard so that that doesn't happen, so that a new, let's say, there's a flip side and there's different people that are getting elected? How can those laws, and Ozzy can answer it for you, Greg, safe travels back home?
Oh, no, I'm packing up, but I've still got Wi-Fi, so I'm
Okay.
with you for the time being.
So I guess, Ozzy, you had your hand raised. How can we further secure some of these laws that are being, like, I've been working on that aquifer. Like, I've been concerned about that for 20 years. I've been involved in issues down near Duchess Mall. And not just the current one going on. So that really was very, very important to me when that aquifer overlay was set. But how can you further protect those laws?
Well, that's what we did. We passed the Aquifer Protection Overlay Law, and then we added the DWSB2 with the state. I think we're less than 50 out of 933 towns in New York. I think less than 50 were accepted into this program. That alone is going to make it more difficult, because once somebody changes it, the state's going to be notified, and it's going to raise a whole host of questions. And water is a limited resource. So if you don't have enough water to, say, put up 1,000 homes, but you can have enough water to put up 300 homes, and that's what you're going to be able to build. I hope you guys understand that. So it's about capacity. So if you don't have the water to develop, then you just can't develop just on that aspect alone. We passed a law about selling town-owned land. With the Rolling Hills project, my predecessor was going to sell an old well field that was probably a bunch of acres in the middle of this project to allow the developer to put up the high-density housing. Now, if somebody in the future wishes to sell that land, the citizens of Fishkill are going to have a right to vote on it, to whether to sell it. That's another step that we've done to control things. When developers come in and make a mess like they did with the CubeSmart property on 82 and 52, we passed a performance bond where the developers have to give us money. So if they walk away, we can remediate that, and it doesn't sit in a disrepair for years. And most importantly, we changed the code, or section 150 of the town code regarding development, to protect us not only from the high density housing, but we changed some subtle wording to prevent non-for-profits to come into the town of Fishkill, to where we have it set up to where if it went to the Supreme Court of the United States, it's bulletproof. So these are things that are in there. And if you don't have the capacity, for example, there was I inherited a $5.6 million plan to connect the Merritt Park to the Brickerhoff Water District for $5.6 million. I'm probably going to get it done between 1.1 and 1.3 million. And you say to yourself, how can that happen? I designed it only to take care of the health department problems, not design it to accommodate the developers to make more money in expansion. If a developer wants to get in on this, the developer can pay its own money to build the extra pumps, the extra lines, et cetera, et cetera. So when it comes to what Greg was talking about, putting the citizens first, it's not talk. We've been doing it for the last 4 years. And with Greg's help and Don's help with the comprehensive plan, we've got it done. We've got all of this done within 4 years. And hopefully we got another 4 years to keep this up. Any other questions?
If no one has anything else, we have been on for an hour. I think this has been a great call. We will be doing this again next Monday with whatever information we have between now and then with these FOIA requests coming in. Please save the date. November 16th, I believe, is the public hearing in the village, where we will be obviously keeping a very close eye on that. There's a lot of improvements to be made, but I am seeing more and more people interested in helping. If you can help volunteer, read through these FOIA requests. I mean, if everybody could contribute $10 to our budget so that we could get some signage and have some actual tools. You know, the postcards are going to be important because those will be, we can walk them door to door, because there's a lot of people who don't have Facebook, who don't have social media, who aren't on our email list, right? So we do, that was a huge part of fighting the developments that we fought in the past. Yeah, Loretta, go ahead.
Can you post the letter from Ozzy and John?
Actually, I'm glad you asked me that.
Yeah.
That is, oops, sorry. That is on, whoops, where am I? Let me go to our website. And by the way, if you saw that, it was just on Facebook. It was John Foreman's picture with him stealing another sign. Like, I can't even. From like October 13th. Okay. So are you guys seeing this? I'm sharing my screen, right? This is the keepfishkillbeautiful.com website. And I believe I have linked, yep, right here to the timeline is a link from September 21st, and this should take us right to the letter. And it was an email, right? So this is, you can read the letter that Ozzy signed, that Louise Daniele, who is a council person, sent in. And you can read that right there. And here, there's other documentation, you know, including links to minutes, a lot of information that we are able to find. And this is on our website. So that's a good resource too.
So Carmine's email or letter is also there.
No,
The one that is the piece I'm missing.
Right. No. The letter, and I gotta say this, like in their defense, Carmine sent me the letter. I don't think Carmine's talking to me anymore, you know, and because I lost it, or I would go ask for it back. But he sent me the letter that that the three of them had signed. And honestly, it was a good letter. I mean, I remember seeing it and kind of saying, you know, it was similar to the other letters we've seen where they said we're going to stand by the residents. I'm paraphrasing because I have so many emails that I promptly lost it and wasn't able to include it. Ozzy, you got your hand up?
It was a very good letter. But
Right.
they did not have the courage. They did not have the courage. If my opponent would have got up and spoke that letter and the planning board meeting, he would have gotten applause.
Yeah.
He
Yep.
would have.
I liked the letter. And
But
Ozzy's absolutely right. Like, John Foreman was present and he sat silent when
he would have gotten applause. But the marching orders are clear. They are owned by the developers, period. He could have been a hero that night. He didn't have the courage to speak up for the residents of Fishkill. He's voted on behalf of the developers every time he's had a chance. He's taken money from developers without disclosing it. That night, I was shocked. The letter, I read it. It was a really good letter, and he could have been a hero that night. But the special interest, the developers, are what's important to these guys, not the residents of Fishkill. I think it's very important. Everybody that spoke for the residents was treated like a hero. He had a chance to be a hero. Instead, he remained silent and did nothing. And I think that's very important for people to understand that.
And I definitely don't want this to get into like bashing other candidates. I mean, you know, but I will say that there's a reason that we're endorsing these three. I'm very hopeful that we are standing on the right side of who's going to be elected right now. I hope everybody gets out to vote. Early voting, I've already done it. It's all week from, I think, 9 to 5 every day. Then Thursday, I think it goes till 8. So please go ahead and get out and vote. If there are no further questions, we will wrap this up. I will be sharing the recording later. And I appreciate the Don and Ozzy and Greg for coming by and for being so candid and answering questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you to
welcome.
the candidates for showing up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.